find a student, and you can either click on the student's name or you can click on all students in cell. It will still take you to the continuum of learning. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can always have a hard copy of that continuum of learning. I just find that it's so much easier to click and it takes you right there. Once you've done that, you're going to have a whole list of skills that the students are ready to learn. You want to look at that middle column. Once you've done that, it gets a little overwhelming, to be perfectly honest, because there's a whole bunch of skills listed. Now, they are categorized by different parts of that particular goal and sub-goal area. So there's reading strategies, comprehending literary text, and there's all kinds of literary text and comprehension skills, and then it has main ideas and skills, and it has it's grouped differently. But even within that, there's a lot of skills. So that's why focusing on one particular thing is very important. So I'm focusing on characterization. Even within characterization, there's a whole bunch of skills there that they need to be working on. So I always like to choose maybe 2, at the most 3. So I chose 2 skills of characterization that I want my students to be working on in this particular lesson. So again, I'm starting right in the middle, that RIT range of 191 to 200, and I found 2 skills that I want them to be working on with characterization. So I chose infers a character's feelings in simple literary text and analyzes character traits in literary text. So this is step 6 that we're working on page 14, and I'm writing it right here in this middle column, skills from selected learning data statements. So in that middle range, that's what I wrote right here. Okay. Now, what's really nice is I'm going to look at the below. I want to look right to the left and see what are skills that are very similar to characterization that I want the students who are just a little bit lower to be working on. But it's similar, it's still the same vein, it's still the same skill, but it's scaffolded a little bit more, it's a little bit lower. So when I looked, I saw that these skills are there in the column to the left, which is the RIT scale right below, that RIT range right below. Identifies main characters in a literary text, and identifies a character's feeling in simple literary text. So that's what I wrote for my below score range. I want them to be working on. It's still characterization, but it's just a little bit more simple that they're going to be working on. And then I went to the column on the right and I said, what do I want my students in that above score RIT range to be working on? I still want it to be characterization. I want it to be very similar. And so I chose explains how the author introduces characters in a literary text and assesses character development in literary text. So do you see how it's all about characterization? It just steps up depending on what RIT range they are in. So once I have identified what skills I want each group to be working on, then I can go to step 7, which is thinking, okay, how do I want to organize my class activities for these students to show these particular skills? Now, I know as a teacher, you don't have a whole lot of time to be designing individual lessons. So I wanted to show you with my thinking how you can design something that's very similar, but is scaffolded for each RIT group. So for my below level, they need to identify a main character and the feelings of those characters. So what I have for my activity is I'm going to have them read a simple literary text, and then I'm going to have them fill out a chart. And on that chart, they have to write the main character, and then next to that, the feeling. Then I'm going to have them discuss that with a partner, and for their assessment, they're going to turn in their chart. So basically, they're going to be reading, filling out a chart on the characters and their feelings, and then turning it in. Now, for my middle range group, they have to infer a character's feelings in a simple literary text and analyzing a character's traits in a literary text. So I'm going to have them do something very similar. I'm going to have them read a literary text, and then I'm going to have them fill out a chart. Now their chart is going to look just a little bit different. They're still going to identify the character, and then they're going to identify the feeling, but then they have to put the evidence. Because they're going to have to infer, now they have to justify how they figured that out. That's a little bit higher level, okay? Then they're going to have to put the character trait and once again justify that trait. So they still are having to fill out a chart. They just have to fill out different information in that chart, okay? And then they're going to need to discuss that with a partner and assess that. So I will have taught these things through small group, but then I'm going to have them do different activities based on what I taught and what they're ready to learn. Now my high level group, they are going to need to assess the character development in literary text and explain how the author introduces characters in a literary text. Now, one of the words that's missing in this is simple. The others had to read simple text. So I want to make sure that what they're going to read is text at a grade level. So when I give them text, it's going to be at a higher level. 2, I'm going to have them fill out a chart. But their chart is going to have the character. They have to write how that character is introduced at the beginning, what their traits are, and then because they have to analyze it throughout, they're going to write their traits at the beginning, if there was a change in that character, and what their traits were at the end. They're going to discuss this with a partner, and then I'm going to assess them by turning in their chart. So all 3 levels are still going to have a chart. They're going to be turning in a chart, but their charts are going to be assessing different skills. So I am targeting what they're ready to learn based on the information I have from the continuum of learning. Once again, I've streamlined it, however, because I don't want to do entirely different things, because a teacher needs to streamline their information. So we've gone through steps 1 through 7 and thought about just one idea, which is characterization, and how I can differentiate my learning for my students based on what they want to learn, based on that class breakdown by goal. The left-hand side, which skills they've mastered most.